Welcome to Midnight Casebook, where every shadow hides a secret and every mystery begs to be solved. Tonight, we unravel the chilling tale of Father Brown and the Choirboy Knew Too Much, a fan-made story paying homage to the brilliance of G.K., Chesterton's legendary detective. We'd love to have you along for this enigmatic journey. Drop a comment to let us know where you're watching from, share your theories, and if you spot any inconsistencies, don't hesitate to call them out. Your keen eyes and sharp minds help us craft even more captivating mysteries in the future. Chapter 1. The Choirboy's Secret Shattered Silence. The moment the choirboy's voice cut through the chapel that cold evening, the world seemed to hold its breath. But what no one realized was that his silence was about to shatter everything they thought they knew about that quiet parish. Father Brown, standing in the shadowed corner of the dimly lit church, felt the weight of the moment like a sudden chill down his spine. The boy's secret wasn't just a hidden sin. It was a fracture in the very foundation of their community, and it whispered promises of darkness far beyond a simple confession. There was something in the boy's eyes, a flicker of fear, that suggested he carried knowledge so dangerous it threatened to unravel not only lives, but the fragile peace itself. Father Brown had long learned that beneath the calmest surfaces lie the deadliest storms, but even he wasn't prepared for the tempest that was about to break. It began as an ordinary evening service, the kind that had repeated itself so many times that the faintest rustle of robes or the soft shuffle of feet could almost be predicted. The choirboy, Thomas, sang his part with flawless precision, but there was a tremor, subtle yet undeniable, that caught Father Brown's attention. After the last hymn, the boy lingered near the altar, glancing nervously towards the confessional booth. A few whispered words passed between him and the elderly priest, but it was the look on Thomas's face afterward that haunted Father Brown as he closed the church doors behind him. There was a silence in the air, not the peace of prayer, but the heavy hush of something forbidden, something buried too deep for easy discovery. The next morning, the village was stirred not by the usual gossip, but by the sudden disappearance of Thomas. No note, no clue, just an empty bed and a church still echoing with his song. Father Brown's heart clenched. This was no simple case of a runaway boy. It felt like a message, a warning, wrapped in shadow. He searched the boy's room and found a folded piece of paper beneath the mattress, carefully hidden and almost invisible to the casual observer. The words on that paper were not a confession, but a puzzle, cryptic and laced with coded references to names and places Father Brown barely recognized. It was as if Thomas had stumbled onto a secret so tangled and dark that revealing it would destroy everything he cared about. The puzzle led Father Brown deep into the village's underbelly, to faces once trusted, to alleys whispered about only in fearful tones, and to a history long buried beneath polite smiles. Each step closer to the truth seemed to multiply the questions rather than provide answers. Was Thomas a victim, a witness, or something more? Father Brown could feel the weight of suspicion creeping, infecting every relationship, every friendly nod in the street. Even those closest to the church began to look like strangers, their eyes darting with hidden fears and unspoken lies. And the deeper Father Brown delved, the more the fabric of the village's innocence unraveled into threads of greed, betrayal, and secrets that clawed at his very faith. One night, as the rain lashed against the stained glass windows, Father Brown sat alone in the vestry, the mysterious paper laid out before him. The coded message began to reveal fragments of a scandal involving the choir. Not just Thomas, but others too, caught in a web of blackmail and silence. But the most disturbing revelation was the mention of a name that sent a cold shudder through Father Brown, the parish priest's own brother. The implication was explosive, a betrayal so close and so personal it threatened to consume the entire community. Yet, as Father Brown pondered this, he found himself doubting his own instincts. Could the evidence be a cruel trap designed to mislead and destroy? Was Thomas's silence a shield for a deeper evil or a desperate attempt to protect the innocent? The village's calm facade shattered further when a local historian came forward with an old diary discovered in the church's forgotten archives. The diary hinted at similar disappearances decades earlier, always around the time the choir was rehearsing for major services. The pattern was chilling, suggesting that Thomas's secret was just the latest in a long line of shadows haunting the church's history. But who was behind it all? A secret society, corrupt officials, or a curse passed down through generations? Father Brown wrestled with these possibilities, the line between superstition and reality blurring into a terrifying uncertainty. Just as Father Brown prepared to confront the parish priest, a desperate call shattered the night, a voice muffled and frantic, claiming to have the key to the choir boy's fate. But before Father Brown could arrive, the line went dead, leaving only silence and dread hanging in the air. Was this a trap, or a final chance to save Thomas? The priest knew that every answer seemed to birth new questions, that the more he sought the truth, the deeper the darkness enveloped him. The village, once a sanctuary, had turned into a labyrinth of lies and peril, with no clear path out. In the final moments before dawn, Father Brown stood once again in the empty church, the first rays of light painting stained glass in fragmented hues. He whispered, almost to himself, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The weight of that confession was unbearable, a silent verdict that promised more secrets buried beneath the choir's haunting melodies. And as the bells tolled in the distance, Father Brown felt the crushing reality. Some silences were never meant to be broken, some secrets too shattering to face, and some truths too terrible to reveal. Chapter 2. Father Brown's Most Dangerous Confession. The moment I confessed what I knew, I realized I had become the greatest threat to my own flock. Father Brown's voice was low, almost a whisper, but the weight of his words hung in the cold chapel air like a deadly fog. What he revealed next wasn't just a secret, it was a confession, so perilous, so shattering, it threatened to upend everything he had sworn to protect. The priest's eyes, usually gentle and knowing, now bore a haunted intensity, as if the burden of this knowledge clawed relentlessly at his soul. In that instant, it was clear that this was no ordinary mystery. This was a labyrinth of shadows, where the line between sinner and savior blurred, and Father Brown stood precariously on the knife edge of truth and destruction. It began in the aftermath of Thomas's disappearance, the choir boy whose silence had fractured their peace. Father Brown was called to a secluded confessional, one that had long been abandoned but had recently been reopened by an anonymous letter urging him to seek the truth there. Inside the cramped, shadowed booth, a trembling voice confessed a secret so dark it almost broke Father Brown's resolve. The confession was tangled in riddles and half-truths, hinting at a conspiracy rooted deep within the church's own walls. But it was not the nature of the crime alone that unsettled him. It was the implication that the priest himself, a man trusted by all, was somehow entangled in a web of lies that threatened his very soul. Father Brown's mind raced as he pieced together the fragments of the confession. Names were whispered, names of parishioners thought loyal, of friends whose smiles now seemed masks concealing sinister intent. The confession spoke of forbidden rituals, of a shadowy pact forged decades ago, where faith was twisted into a weapon wielded in darkness. Yet every step Father Brown took towards uncovering the truth only deepened the shadows around him. Old friends grew distant, eyes narrowed in suspicion. Even the church pews seemed to creak with secrets. What had once been a sanctuary now felt like a trap, and Father Brown found himself questioning everything, including his own judgment. The tension escalated when Father Brown discovered a hidden chamber beneath the church, accessed through a forgotten door behind the altar. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the scent of long-forgotten sins. Ancient symbols adorned the walls, their meaning obscured by time, but pulsing with a sinister energy. Among the relics, Father Brown found a weathered diary belonging to the church's founder, filled with cryptic entries that hinted at a dark legacy, a legacy that the current parish priest was desperately trying to conceal. The diary's final entry was a chilling warning. The sins of the fathers will claim their children unless the truth is buried forever. Father Brown's heart pounded as he realized the stakes were far higher than he had imagined. As he delved deeper, Father Brown unearthed a connection between the Choirboys' disappearance and this ancient legacy. Thomas had stumbled upon something no innocent soul should witness, and his silence was not cowardice but protection. Protection from forces far more dangerous than mere mortal men. But who was orchestrating this web of deceit? The parish priest? A secret cabal within the village? Or something even more unfathomable? Each revelation seemed to contradict the last, leaving Father Brown drowning in uncertainty. The more he sought to expose the darkness, the more he questioned if the truth was even knowable, or if it was a poison best left undisturbed. Then came the first big shock. A letter appeared on Father Brown's desk, unsigned and ominous. It contained a single phrase: "The greatest sin is silence, and you have broken yours." The message was clear: a warning or a threat. Father Brown realized that his confession had unleashed a storm, and the protectors of the secret would stop at nothing to bury the truth again. But the letter also hinted at someone close, someone he trusted implicitly, who might be the key to unraveling the mystery or the source of its darkness. Paranoia crept in, twisting friendships into threats, and Father Brown found himself isolated in a house of shadows. Just as the tension reached unbearable heights, Father Brown was summoned to a midnight meeting in the graveyard. The figure waiting was cloaked in darkness, voice barely more than a rasp, revealing cryptic knowledge about the choirboy and the church's past. Yet before the truth could be fully unveiled, the stranger vanished into the night, leaving Father Brown with more questions than answers, and a chilling realization that the danger was not just external, but within himself. Had his own confession marked him as a target? Had his search for truth doomed the very souls he sought to save? The climax came when Father Brown uncovered evidence implicating the parish priest in a decades-old betrayal, a betrayal that had corrupted the church's heart and endangered every soul who sought sanctuary there. But the proof was fragile. Shadows cast by doubt and fear. Every step forward felt like walking blindfolded on a razor's edge. The final puzzle piece remained elusive, hidden behind layers of deceit and denial. And as Father Brown stared into the abyss of the church's stained glass windows, he whispered to the empty nave, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The confession was his most dangerous yet, not because it revealed a crime easily solved, but because it opened a door to darkness that could never be closed again. The church that once stood as a beacon of hope now seemed poised on the brink of ruin, and Father Brown's soul bore the heavy price of knowledge no one else dared seek. The question lingered in the heavy air. How far would one man go to protect a secret that could destroy everything, even himself? And as the shadows deepened, so too did the silence. A silence shattered only by the echo of a priest's most dangerous confession. Chapter 3. The Truth. Choirboy tried hiding. The choirboy never vanished. He was silenced because of what he knew. That line wasn't whispered in fear. It was shouted through every shadow that clung to the cold stone walls of the village church. Father Brown stood motionless, the weight of those words pressing down on him like a funeral shroud. This was not just a disappearance or a secret withheld. It was a lie buried beneath layers of deception, so thick even the brightest light threatened to smother in darkness. Thomas's silence had never been accidental. It was a deliberate, desperate attempt to protect a truth that could destroy everything. And now, as Father Brown followed the twisted path left behind, he realized that uncovering that truth might cost more than he was willing to pay. The mystery began the moment Thomas failed to return home after evening prayers. At first, the village thought him a runaway, a frightened boy, fleeing unknown fears. But Father Brown's instincts whispered otherwise. Something in the boy's hurried glances, his trembling hands during confession, hinted at terror far greater than youthful rebellion. Searching Thomas's belongings, Father Brown discovered a folded letter, hastily scribbled and soaked in fear. Its cryptic message hinting at a betrayal within the very choir that once promised sanctuary. Yet the letter's fragmented clues only deepened the puzzle. Names crossed out, dates that didn't add up, and references to a meeting no one recalled. The choirboy's secret was more than just a personal confession. It was a thread unraveling the village's entire fabric. Father Brown's pursuit of the truth led him into a labyrinth of whispered conversations and guarded silences. The village elders, once pillars of trust, now avoided his gaze. The choir members grew distant, their harmonies shadowed by suspicion. And beneath it all lay a secret society, one that twisted faith into power, their influence extending beyond the church walls into every corner of the community. It was a darkness so pervasive that Father Brown felt himself sinking deeper with each discovery. Was the church itself a prison built on lies? Was the choir boy's silence the key to a sin too monstrous to face? The questions swirled like a storm, threatening to engulf all reason. The suspense mounted when Father Brown uncovered a hidden passage beneath the vestry, concealed behind an ancient tapestry depicting saints and sinners indistinguishable from one another. The passage led to a room lined with charred documents and faded photographs, evidence of rituals and meetings long erased from official records. Among the ashes, Father Brown found a diary, its pages stained and torn, but bearing one chilling entry. He saw what no one should see. Silence was his only refuge. The author's identity remained a mystery, but the implication was clear. Thomas had stumbled onto a secret so dangerous that his knowledge was a death sentence. Yet, even this revelation raised doubts. Was Thomas merely a victim, or was there something darker beneath his innocent exterior? The first big reveal came when Father Brown was handed a letter anonymously, one that implicated the village's revered mayor in the Choirboys' fate. The letter described clandestine meetings held under the guise of holy gatherings, where deals were struck and lives manipulated. But the most terrifying detail was the suggestion that the mayor's ambitions had twisted into a web of corruption that even the church was powerless to unravel. Father Brown's faith was shaken. The lines between good and evil blurred in his mind. Could the man trusted to lead the village also be the architect of its darkest secrets? The confession tore at Father Brown's very beliefs, forcing him to confront the uncomfortable truth that evil often wears a mask of righteousness. Just as Father Brown prepared to confront the mayor, he received an urgent call, an untraceable voice warning him to cease his inquiries or suffer consequences. The threat was clear, but the source was elusive, cloaked in the shadows of the village's elite. Every ally seemed suspect. Every shadow carried a potential betrayer. Paranoia gripped Father Brown's heart as he realized the true danger wasn't only in the secrets he sought, but in the enemies those secrets had made. The Choirboys' silence was not just about survival, it was a testament to the deadly game being played behind closed doors. The cliffhanger came unexpectedly during a midnight vigil in the church. Father Brown found a hidden envelope beneath the altar, containing a photograph that froze his blood. Thomas, alive, yet staring blankly, his eyes glazed as if trapped in a nightmare. The caption was a riddle. The truth lies not in death, but in the silence before. What did it mean? Was Thomas still alive, or was this a cruel deception? Was his silence enforced by chains, visible or invisible? And who held those chains? Father Brown stood alone in the flickering candlelight, the cold walls closing in as he whispered, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The silence that followed was more terrifying than any scream. As the story faded into darkness, the viewer is left grasping at shadows, questions multiplying with no clear answers, mysteries layered upon mysteries, and a chilling realization that some truths are so deeply hidden that unveiling them might destroy everything, including the seekers. The Choirboy's secret was not merely a secret. It was a dark wound in the heart of the village, bleeding silence that no one dared to hear. And Father Brown's journey had only just begun, into depths so dark, even his faith was tested beyond endurance. Chapter 4. Murder Whispers Inside the Choir. The moment the choir's hymn was drowned not by song, but by a stifled gasp, I knew a murder was hiding beneath the melodies. Father Brown's voice trembled slightly, the weight of his words sinking like a stone into the cold silence that followed. This was no ordinary crime. It was a poison seeping through the very veins of the church, contaminating every note, every breath, every whispered secret. The choir, once a sanctuary of harmony and faith, had become a stage for betrayal, where murder whispered not in screams, but in haunting silences. Father Brown had never encountered a darkness so profound, a mystery so tangled, that each answer only bred deeper suspicion. It all began with the discovery of a lifeless body in the choir loft. Young Matthew, the newest member of the choir, found slumped against the ancient wooden pews, his face pale and eyes wide with a final, frozen terror. The village was shaken. The church bells tolled not in celebration, but in mourning. Who could have wished harm upon the boy whose voice was said to bring angels to tears? Yet Father Brown sensed that the surface calm hid a maelstrom of secrets, secrets that threatened to tear the community apart. The problem was as intricate as the sacred music they performed, a murder woven into the fabric of the choir, its motives hidden beneath layers of faith and fear. As Father Brown delved into the mystery, the complexity of the case became overwhelming. Every member of the choir had a story, a past tangled in shadows and half-truths. Rivalries simmered beneath rehearsed smiles. Jealousy festered in the quiet corners of the vestry. And then there were the letters, cryptic notes left anonymously, hinting at sins committed in the dark, sins that someone was desperate to keep buried. But none of it fit together neatly. Every clue seemed to contradict another. Every confession revealed another lie. Father Brown was caught in a web of deceit, spun by those sworn to sing praises of truth and purity. The suspense escalated when Father Brown uncovered a hidden ledger tucked away in the choir director's private study. The ledger detailed secret transactions and unexplained expenses, hinting at blackmail and bribery intertwined with the choir's affairs. More disturbing was the implication that Matthew had stumbled upon this ledger, his silence a threat to those who wielded power behind the scenes. But the layers of darkness only deepened when a second letter arrived, this one addressed directly to Father Brown, warning him to stop his inquiries or face consequences far worse than death. The chilling message blurred the lines between friend and foe, trust and betrayal. The first big reveal shattered the fragile peace of the village. Matthew had not been the innocent victim he appeared to be. Father Brown uncovered evidence suggesting the boy had been involved in manipulations far beyond his years, playing a dangerous game with secrets that could topple the church's most respected figures. This revelation sent shockwaves through the community. Could the choirboy's death have been a consequence of his own dark dealings? Or was he merely a pawn, sacrificed by those with far greater ambitions? Father Brown's faith was tested as the mystery twisted from murder to conspiracy, and the choir's song became a requiem for innocence lost. Just as Father Brown thought he might unravel the truth, a new and devastating twist emerged. A late-night confession from a choir member, whispered under trembling breath, revealed the existence of a clandestine meeting held beneath the church's crypt, where the choir's darkest secrets were exchanged in hushed tones and shadowed glances. The members of this secret gathering were not just musicians, but players in a deadly game of power and silence, each hiding motives more sinister than the last. Father Brown was left questioning whether the murder was a singular act of violence or a symptom of a rot spreading throughout the heart of the church. The cliffhanger came abruptly, during a storm that shattered the village's fragile calm. Father Brown discovered a blood-stained hymn book with a final, scrawled message. The last note has been sung, but the silence will kill us all. The words echoed through the empty church like a death knell, a warning of betrayals yet to come. Standing in the flickering candlelight, Father Brown whispered with a heavy heart, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The shadows deepened around him as the weight of silence pressed in. Some murders speak not through violence, but through the deadly quiet that follows. And in this choir, that silence was more terrifying than any scream. As the mystery consumed the heart of the village, viewers are left suspended between truth and deception, trapped in a maze where faith collides with fear, and every whispered note carries the potential for ruin. The story refuses closure, the answers dissolving into doubt, compelling the audience to wrestle with the unsettling question: when murder whispers inside the choir, who will dare to sing again? Chapter 5. Father Brown's mind unravels darkness. The darkness inside my mind was no longer an enemy to fight. It had become the only place where the truth dared to live. Father Brown's confession struck like thunder in the silent room, shaking the very foundations of belief. What had begun as a search for answers had twisted into a nightmare of shadows and doubt, so profound that even the light of faith seemed powerless to pierce it. His mind, once a sanctuary of calm reason, now spiraled into chaos, unraveling the delicate threads that held reality together. The mystery had become not just an external puzzle, but a battle within, a descent into a darkness darker than any sin he had ever faced. The case that consumed him was unlike any other. The disappearance of Thomas, the choir boy, and the string of secrets that followed had turned the village into a maze of fear and suspicion. But now, as Father Brown probed deeper, he realized the truth was a beast with many faces, some so horrifying that to see them was to risk madness itself. Every discovery brought fresh torment, a hidden ledger revealing illicit dealings, a whispered confession of betrayal, a chilling symbol carved into ancient stone. The complexity overwhelmed him. The lines between friend and foe blurred, and every familiar face seemed a mask hiding some unfathomable intent. As his investigation progressed, Father Brown began to experience visions, fractured memories, and shadowy figures haunting his waking moments. His mind, stretched to breaking point, conjured whispers that might be real or imagined, voices accusing, pleading, or mocking. Sleep eluded him, replaced by endless nights where the darkness inside mirrored the darkness outside. Was this unraveling a sign of weakness, or had he stumbled upon a truth so terrible it clawed at his sanity? The tension mounted as Father Brown grappled with the possibility that his own mind was becoming a prison, trapping him in a labyrinth from which escape was uncertain. Then came the first big reveal, delivered in a moment of fragile clarity amid the chaos. A hidden correspondence surfaced, letters exchanged between key villagers that unveiled a conspiracy far beyond petty jealousy or greed. These letters spoke of ritualistic acts, of sacrifices made in silence to protect secrets that could topple the church and the village alike. Most shockingly, one letter hinted at Father Brown himself, suggesting that the priest was either complicit or dangerously close to uncovering a truth some wished to bury forever. The realization shattered any remaining certainty. He was no longer just an observer, but a participant in a deadly game whose rules were cruel and unknowable. As the darkness closed in, Father Brown's world began to unravel completely. Trusted allies withdrew, frightened or unwilling to face the encroaching evil. Accusations flew like arrows in a storm. Some whispered behind closed doors, others shouted in despair. The village's facade of peace cracked, revealing fractures so deep that healing seemed impossible. Father Brown's own faith wavered, tested by betrayals, both external and internal. The voices in his mind grew louder. Were they warnings or condemnations? Was he losing himself or discovering a hidden self that the church had never dared acknowledge? The cliffhanger arrived with a letter slipped beneath his door in the dead of night, its contents a riddle wrapped in menace. To unravel the darkness, you must first embrace it, but beware. The shadows do not forgive. Father Brown's heart pounded as he understood that the final truth demanded a sacrifice far greater than he had anticipated. To find justice, he might have to surrender not only his peace of mind, but the very essence of who he was. The mystery had consumed him so utterly that the boundary between salvation and damnation blurred into nothingness. Standing alone in the flickering candlelight of the empty church, Father Brown whispered, with a voice heavy with resignation, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The silence that followed was not peace, but a suffocating darkness, a darkness that promised that some secrets, once unearthed, would unravel everything they touched, including the mind of the one who dared to seek them. The story leaves the viewer teetering on the edge of understanding, trapped in a spiral of doubt and dread, unable to discern what is real and what is a shadow of a shattered soul. Chapter 6. The Choirboy's Last Terrifying Message. The last words Thomas whispered before silence swallowed him were a warning so dark they chilled the very soul of the church. Father Brown felt those words like a blade slicing through the fragile calm that had settled over the village. The choirboy's final message was not a plea for help, but a cryptic prophecy, a riddle wrapped in fear that no one dared to speak aloud. It was as if Thomas had seen a shadow, lurking just beyond the light, a darkness that threatened to consume everything sacred. Father Brown knew that understanding this message was the key to unlocking the mystery, yet each step toward the truth only pulled him deeper into a labyrinth of despair and deception. The mystery began with the discovery of a worn notebook tucked beneath Thomas's prayer book, its pages filled with frantic scribbles and unsettling drawings. The choirboy's handwriting was erratic, the words twisted by terror and confusion. The margins, phrases like, "They watch," "The silence is death," and "The last song will end all," hinted at a secret he could barely comprehend, let alone confront. Father Brown pored over the notebook, sensing that these were not mere childish fears, but a map to a darkness far greater than any had imagined. The problem was how to decode a message so fractured and terrifying that it seemed to mock his every attempt at clarity. As Father Brown dug deeper, the complexity of the case overwhelmed him. The notebook connected Thomas to figures in the village once thought harmless: teachers, choir leaders, even priests, each harboring secrets and motives hidden beneath pious facades. Whispers of forbidden meetings, veiled threats, and silent bargains emerged, creating a tangled web of alliances and betrayals. Yet the more Father Brown uncovered, the more the truth slipped through his fingers like smoke. He found himself questioning not only the people around him, but his own perceptions, caught in a vortex of doubt and fear. The choirboy's last message seemed less a warning and more a curse, designed to unravel minds and destroy faith. The suspense escalated when Father Brown discovered a hidden recording device beneath the church's altar, its tapes containing voices that sent shivers down his spine. Among the distorted sounds was Thomas's trembling voice, revealing fragments of conversations about debts owed, secrets traded, and lives endangered. The tapes painted a grim picture of corruption and menace within the church walls, but the voices also hinted at an unknown figure, the orchestrator of these dark dealings, always just beyond reach, always one step ahead. This revelation deepened the mystery, leaving Father Brown with more questions than answers. Who was the puppet master pulling these strings, and why target the innocent choir boy? The first big reveal came with the discovery of a blood-stained letter hidden in the choir boy's locker addressed to Father Brown himself. The letter was a confession and a warning. Trust no one, for the choir sings a dirge of death. I see the shadow, and it moves closer every day. The handwriting was unmistakably Thomas's, but the fear etched into every word made the message almost unbearable to read. This letter shattered any illusions Father Brown held about the village's sanctity. It confirmed that the danger was not random, but calculated, and that Thomas's death was no accident, but a message to those who dared seek the truth. The betrayal was so close, so intimate, that Father Brown's very faith faltered. As Father Brown prepared to confront those involved, a sudden power outage plunged the church into darkness, the silence broken only by a chilling whisper. The song is over, but the silence remains. It was a voice without a body, a presence felt but unseen, and it froze Father Brown in place. The atmosphere thickened with menace, and every shadow seemed to pulse with life. The final twist came when Father Brown found a secret passage behind the choir stalls, leading to a room filled with relics of a forgotten past, artifacts stained by secrets and symbols hinting at a ritual that bound the village in fear. The discovery raised a terrifying question. Had the choir boy uncovered something so horrific that his message was a desperate attempt to warn others before silence consumed him forever? The cliffhanger left Father Brown standing, alone in that hidden chamber, the weight of the choir boy's last message pressing down like a curse. With a voice heavy with sorrow and resignation, he whispered, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The silence that followed was suffocating, a darkness deeper than night itself, promising that some secrets were too terrible to reveal, some messages too terrifying to hear. As the screen fades, viewers are left suspended in dread and disbelief, trapped between the urgent need to know and the paralyzing fear of what that knowledge might bring. The choir boy's final warning was not just a message. It was a haunting echo that refuses to fade, a mystery that consumes all who dare listen. Chapter 7. Father Brown faces hidden shadows. The shadows lurking within our own walls whispered truths so terrible that I feared facing them would unravel my very soul. Father Brown's voice carried a tremor, not of weakness, but of a profound realization. The darkness he had long suspected was not outside, but woven deep inside the heart of the village, the church, and himself. The mystery he chased had transformed into a haunting presence, an invisible enemy that cloaked every familiar face in suspicion. What began as a simple quest for truth now threatened to consume everything he believed, leaving him stranded between light and abyss. The problem was not just one of missing children or cryptic messages. It was a shadow play of secrets, lies, and betrayals so complex that untangling them seemed impossible. Father Brown found himself in a maze where every path led to more questions, every revelation birthed new doubts. The villagers' smiles were masks, their prayers, whispers of deception. Those he trusted most hid agendas darker than any sin confessed in the confessional. It was as if the shadows themselves had taken form, shaping a conspiracy that threatened to swallow the church whole. Suspense mounted as Father Brown uncovered evidence that blurred the lines between victim and villain. A hidden room beneath the chapel revealed artifacts stained with secrets, old photographs, letters soaked in betrayal, and relics of rituals forgotten by time. But the most unsettling discovery was a ledger chronicling names and dates, linking the choirboys' fate to powerful figures in the village, including members of the clergy. The shadows grew deeper, more sinister, as Father Brown realized the darkness was not just external, it was entwined with faith itself, a poison infecting the very source of salvation. The first big reveal shattered Father Brown's fragile hope. A letter surfaced, unsigned, but filled with chilling intent, accusing him of complicity in the choirboys' silence. The writer claimed Father Brown had known more than he admitted, and that his inaction had allowed evil to thrive unchecked. This accusation cut deeper than any blade, forcing Father Brown to question his own conscience and the choices that had led him here. Could the man sworn to protect souls be the unwitting architect of their despair? The revelation cast a shadow so vast that trust became a fragile illusion. As Father Brown grappled with this unbearable truth, a clandestine meeting in the dead of night revealed a network of villagers bound by fear and silence. Their whispered confessions spoke of blackmail, betrayal, and sacrifices made to keep the shadows at bay. Yet, in their desperation, they feared that revealing the full extent of the darkness would doom them all. Father Brown stood at the crossroads of revelation and ruin, torn between exposing the shadows and preserving what little light remained. The stakes had never been higher. The mystery was no longer just a puzzle, but a matter of survival. The cliffhanger arrived with a chilling message scrawled on the church wall. "The light you seek will burn you alive." Father Brown stood alone before it, the weight of countless secrets pressing down like a suffocating veil. His whispered words carried both defiance and despair. "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The darkness closed in, promising that some shadows are not meant to be chased, some truths too terrible to face. The story leaves viewers stranded in a void of uncertainty, their curiosity ignited yet overwhelmed, trapped in the haunting question: when the shadows hide within, who can truly be trusted? Chapter 8. The secret choirboy couldn't keep. The secret Thomas carried wasn't just dangerous, it was a poison so lethal that keeping it meant death, and revealing it meant destruction. Father Brown's voice faltered, the weight of those words sinking into the cold silence like a stone dropped into a still pond. The choirboy's burden was no ordinary secret. It was a dark thread, woven into the very fabric of the village's soul, a truth so shattering that it threatened to unravel everything. Once exposed, Thomas had tried to hold it inside, but some secrets refused to be contained. They claw their way out, dragging chaos in their wake. And Father Brown knew that uncovering this secret was the only way to save what remained, even if it meant losing himself in the process. The mystery began with a letter found hidden beneath the choirboy's bed, its pages filled with cryptic warnings and names crossed out in trembling ink. Thomas had written of meetings held in shadows, of voices promising salvation but delivering only fear. The secret was tangled in lies, half-truths, and silent threats, making it nearly impossible to unravel. Father Brown struggled to piece together a puzzle that refused to fit, each revelation twisting the narrative further into darkness. The problem was not just the secret itself, but the people desperate to keep it buried, people whose lives depended on silence and whose power was rooted in deception. As Father Brown delved deeper, the complexity of the web surrounding the choirboy's secret overwhelmed him. Trusted villagers became suspects, alliances fractured, and the line between protector and predator blurred. Dark motives surfaced: jealousy, greed, revenge, each adding layers to an already suffocating mystery. Father Brown found himself questioning not only the villagers, but also his own faith and judgment. The secret was a shadow that grew with every attempt to expose it, casting doubt on even the purest hearts. And beneath it all, the choirboys' silent cries echoed louder than any confession. The suspense intensified when Father Brown uncovered a hidden diary, its pages stained with tears and fear. The diary chronicled Thomas's desperate attempts to warn others, to reveal the secret without condemning himself. It spoke of a figure wielding influence from behind the scenes, a puppeteer controlling the village's fate through fear and manipulation. But the identity of this figure remained elusive, a phantom in the dark whose reach extended into every corner of the community. The revelation was both terrifying and maddening. The secret was no longer just Thomas's. It was a weapon in a deadly game where trust was a liability. The first big reveal shattered Father Brown's fragile hope for clarity. A confrontation with a long-trusted ally unveiled a betrayal so deep that it shook the foundation of his beliefs. The ally, once a beacon of guidance, was implicated in perpetuating the silence, driven by motives hidden beneath layers of deceit. This twist shattered the illusion of safety, proving that the secret was guarded not just by fear, but by loyalty twisted into complicity. Father Brown was left isolated, forced to navigate a labyrinth where every turn threatened destruction and every truth was cloaked in lies. The cliffhanger arrived with a final chilling message left in the choirboy's handwriting. The secret cannot live. It dies with me, or it kills us all. Father Brown stood alone in the fading light of the empty church, the weight of the secret pressing down like a suffocating shroud. His whispered words held both sorrow and resolve. I know who did it, but the truth will never be told. The silence that followed was not peace, but a darkness deeper than night itself, promising that some secrets demand a price too great to pay. As the screen fades, viewers are left suspended in dread and disbelief, trapped between the desperate need to know and the paralyzing fear of what that knowledge might unleash. The choirboy's secret was not just a mystery, it was a curse, one that consumes all who dare seek the truth. Chapter 9. Father Brown, Hunt's silent killer. The silence before the murder was louder than any scream I have ever heard. Those words echoed in Father Brown's mind as he stood alone in the empty church, the shadows stretching long and thin beneath the flickering candlelight. It was a silence filled with menace, a quiet so profound that it seemed to swallow truth itself. This was no ordinary killer. This was a predator who struck without warning, leaving behind no clues, no cries, no sign of struggle. The choirboy's death was just the beginning, and Father Brown knew that hunting a silent killer meant facing darkness far deeper and more twisted than he had ever imagined. The case had become a maze of dead ends and whispered fears. Thomas's disappearance, followed by the grim discovery of his body, sent shockwaves through the village, but no one could explain how or why. There were no footprints, no fingerprints, no weapon found, only a chilling void where evidence should have been. Father Brown felt the weight of this void pressing on his soul, making every question heavier, every suspicion darker. The problem was not just to find the killer, but to understand a mind so cold, so calculated, that silence itself was their weapon. As Father Brown delved into the village's secrets, he found himself entangled in a web more tangled than he could have guessed. The choir, once a symbol of harmony, was riddled with fractures, jealousies whispered in quiet corners, grudges buried beneath polite smiles. Beneath the surface, there lurked dark motives, revenge, ambition, desperation, all concealed behind facades of piety and innocence, but none of it explained the cold precision of the killer's silence. Father Brown realized he was chasing a shadow, a ghost who slipped through the cracks of human suspicion. The suspense tightened its grip when Father Brown discovered a hidden room beneath the church, a chamber filled with relics and documents that spoke of old secrets long buried. Among them was a journal, its pages stained and brittle, recounting cryptic entries about silence, death, and protection of something sacred. The journal hinted at a pact made in darkness, a vow to guard the church's deepest secret at any cost. But the most disturbing detail was a name, one that Father Brown recognized all too well, implicated in a betrayal so deep that it threatened to unravel everything he held dear. This revelation blurred the lines between friend and foe, truth and deception. The first big reveal came when a trusted villager confessed to overhearing a conversation about the Silent One, a killer who used fear and quietude as weapons, striking unseen and unheard. This confession shattered any remaining illusion of safety, proving that the killer was not just among them, but manipulating them all like pawns in a deadly game. Father Brown's faith wavered as he realized the murderer's reach extended into the heart of the church itself. Trust became a dangerous gamble, and every shadow hid a potential enemy. As the tension reached its peak, Father Brown received a final, chilling message. A folded note slipped under his door, bearing a single sentence. "The silence is not empty, it listens." The words sent a shiver down his spine, a warning that the killer was watching, waiting, and ready to strike again. Father Brown knew that to catch this silent predator, he would have to confront not only the darkness around him, but the silence within his own soul. The story ended with him standing in the empty choir loft, whispering to the gathering shadows, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The silence that followed was more terrifying than any cry, a silence that promised the darkness was far from over. The viewers are left suspended between fear and fascination, caught in a web of mystery too complex to unravel and too chilling to ignore. The hunt for the silent killer is not just a quest for justice, but a plunge into the abyss where truth and silence collide, leaving all who dare to seek answers trapped in the echoing void. Chapter 10. Choirboy's Warning. Father Brown missed. The moment I realized the choirboy's warning was not just ignored, it was deliberately silenced. Everything changed forever. Father Brown's voice cracked beneath the weight of regret and horror. What had seemed like a tragic accident or a whispered secret was in truth a calculated betrayal so profound that the very foundations of faith trembled beneath it. The warning Thomas had tried to deliver was not a mere caution. It was a desperate scream into a void that chose to remain deaf. And Father Brown understood now that missing that warning had unleashed a darkness, far worse than any he had imagined, a darkness that crept quietly but consumed all in its path. The mystery began with fragments, an overlooked note, a hurried glance, a flicker of fear in the choirboy's eyes that no one dared to interpret. Thomas had tried to speak, to warn, but his message had been lost in a sea of complacency and denial. The village clung to old truths, unwilling to face the rot beneath their peaceful facade. Father Brown found himself navigating a labyrinth where every clue was shrouded in shadows and every truth tangled in lies. The problem was not just uncovering the choirboy's warning, but confronting why it had been dismissed, who had silenced it, and what nightmare was waiting beyond that silence. As Father Brown delved deeper, the suspense grew unbearable. The choir, once a symbol of innocence, was revealed to be a stage for power plays, secrets traded like currency, and fears buried beneath rehearsed harmonies. Whispers of conspiracies emerged, shadowy figures pulling strings, alliances forged in darkness, and a network of silence that protected the guilty. Yet the more Father Brown uncovered, the more the mystery seemed to unravel his own faith. Was he chasing a ghost, or had the choirboy's warning been a real glimpse into a horror so profound that the village chose ignorance over salvation? The suspense peaked when Father Brown discovered a hidden cache of letters, correspondence between village leaders that spoke in coded language about the danger in the choir, the silence that must be kept, and the cost of truth. These letters exposed a conspiracy that extended beyond mere village politics. It was a pact of silence designed to protect a secret so terrible that even Father Brown's prayers faltered at its edges. The revelation left him shattered. Those he had trusted were complicit in burying the choirboy's warning, choosing their own safety over justice. The boundaries between friend and foe blurred, and betrayal seeped into every corner of his world. The first big reveal came when Father Brown confronted a figure long seen as a pillar of the community, a trusted mentor who admitted to suppressing the warning for fear of chaos. This confession was not one of guilt, but of cold calculation, a belief that some truths were too dangerous to face. The mentor's words were a dagger. Protecting the many meant sacrificing the few, and the choirboy was collateral damage in a war no one dared to name. Father Brown's faith cracked beneath this revelation. The village's peace was a fragile illusion, maintained by silence and sacrifice. The choirboy's warning was a forgotten echo, drowned by the weight of fear and complicity. The cliffhanger came unexpectedly, a phone call in the dead of night, a voice distorted but urgent, warning Father Brown that the real danger was only beginning. The caller hinted at a secret ritual, a hidden force manipulating events from the shadows, and a future where silence would no longer be an option. Father Brown was left grasping for answers in the darkness, his own safety threatened by truths others sought to conceal. The story ended with him standing alone before the empty choir stalls, whispering, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The silence that followed was more terrifying than any scream, a silence that promised the nightmare was far from over. The viewers are left suspended in a web of fear and fascination, trapped between the desperate need to uncover the choirboy's warning and the paralyzing dread of what that truth might unleash. The mystery refuses closure. Questions multiply, like shadows in the dark, and the haunting realization settles. Sometimes the greatest danger lies not in the silence we hear, but in the warnings we choose to ignore. Chapter 11. The darkness behind choir's harmony. The sweetest songs often hide the darkest secrets, and in the choir's harmony, a darkness thrived that no one dared to hear. Father Brown's words hung heavy in the stillness of the church, a stark confession that shattered the illusion of peace. What appeared as a serene symphony was, in truth, a cacophony of deceit, fear, and betrayal, a darkness so profound that it clawed beneath every note and silenced every truth. The choir's harmony was a mask, a fragile veil concealing shadows that threatened to consume the village from within. Father Brown realized that to unravel the mystery was to face a darkness darker than any sin confessed in the confessional. The mystery began with small inconsistencies, a wrong note here, a suspicious glance there, that most dismissed as trivial. But Father Brown sensed a pattern, a discordant undercurrent beneath the music's beauty. The disappearance of the choir boy, the whispered warnings he left behind, all pointed to a secret buried deep within the choir's ranks. Yet the problem was labyrinthine. Every clue led to more questions, every truth tangled with lies. The village's facade of harmony was a fragile construct, and Father Brown was determined to expose the rot beneath before it spread beyond repair. As Father Brown delved deeper, the suspense thickened. He uncovered alliances forged in silence, grudges buried beneath smiles, and betrayals wrapped in piety. The choir members, once united by song, were fractured by fear and ambition. Dark motives surfaced, power struggles masked by devotion, secrets traded like currency, and a shadowy figure manipulating events from behind the scenes. Father Brown's faith was tested as the darkness grew, threatening to engulf not only the choir, but the entire community. The mystery was no longer just a puzzle. It was a battle against a creeping evil that defied light. The first big reveal shattered all certainty. Father Brown discovered a hidden ledger detailing payments and threats linked to the choir's activities, evidence of corruption so deep that it implicated some of the village's most respected figures. More disturbing was the realization that the choir boy had uncovered this ledger, making him a target for silencing. Trust crumbled as Father Brown confronted the possibility that those sworn to protect the church were complicit in its decay. The harmony was a facade. Beneath it lay a darkness, feeding on secrets and lies. Just as Father Brown prepared to expose the truth, a chilling message appeared, an anonymous note warning him to cease his inquiries or face consequences worse than death. The note hinted at forces far beyond mortal understanding, suggesting that the darkness behind the choir's harmony was not just human, but something ancient and malevolent. Father Brown stood at the precipice of revelation and ruin, caught between the desperate need for justice and the terrifying possibility that some darkness was eternal. The cliffhanger left Father Brown alone in the empty church, the echo of the choir's silent song lingering in the air. With a voice heavy with sorrow and resolve, he whispered, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told." The silence that followed was not peace, but a suffocating darkness, promising that some secrets demand silence, and some truths are too terrible to share. Viewers are left suspended in dread and disbelief, trapped in a mystery so deep and unsettling that the urge to know battles the fear of what that knowledge might bring. The darkness behind the choir's harmony was not just a secret, it was a curse, one that devours all who seek to uncover it. Chapter 12. Father Brown's deadliest revelation awaits. The truth I uncovered was more lethal than any weapon, a revelation so deadly it threatened to annihilate everything I held sacred. Father Brown's voice trembled as he confessed, the weight of his discovery pressing down like a suffocating shroud. What began as a search for justice had spiraled into a nightmare of shadows, betrayal, and secrets too terrible to speak aloud. The mystery that had haunted the village for months was reaching its terrifying climax, and Father Brown stood at the brink, knowing that the revelation awaiting him was not just a truth, but a curse. To expose it meant risking everything, and to ignore it meant living forever in a prison of lies. The problem was far more complex than anyone had imagined. The choirboys' disappearance, the silent warnings, the whispered conspiracies, all pointed to a darkness embedded deep within the community's heart. But as Father Brown peeled back layer after layer, he found himself drowning in contradictions and half-truths. Friends became suspects. Innocence was a mask worn by the guilty. The village's peaceful facade was a brittle veneer over a festering rot, and Father Brown knew that to find the killer, he had to confront not only the shadows outside, but those lurking within himself. Suspense tightened its grip as Father Brown uncovered a hidden chamber beneath the church, a crypt filled with relics of a forgotten past and documents stained with secrets. Among these was a diary, its pages revealing a web of deceit, blackmail, and betrayal that stretched back decades, implicating figures long thought beyond reproach. The lines between sin and salvation blurred as Father Brown realized the choirboy's death was part of a sinister pattern, a cycle of violence and silence maintained by fear and power. The darkness was no longer a mystery. It was a force alive and hungry, waiting to consume all who dared seek the truth. The first big reveal shattered all illusions. Father Brown discovered that the true mastermind behind the choirboy's fate was someone closest to him, an ally whose betrayal cut deeper than any wound. This revelation fractured Father Brown's trust and faith, leaving him isolated and vulnerable. The betrayal was not only personal, but systemic, exposing a network of corruption that threatened to engulf the entire village. The truth was no longer a beacon of hope, but a blade that threatened to sever all bonds and destroy all innocence. The cliffhanger came when Father Brown received an anonymous message, a final warning etched in blood-red ink. Some truths are deadlier than lies. Choose silence or choose destruction. The words echoed through the empty church, a chilling reminder that the revelation awaiting him was a crossroads between salvation and annihilation. Father Brown stood alone, torn between the duty to expose the darkness and the fear of what that exposure might unleash. His whispered confession, "I know who did it, but the truth will never be told," was both a surrender and a vow, a promise that some secrets are too deadly to share and some revelations too dangerous to face. The silence that followed was heavier than any confession. A darkness that promised the end was only the beginning.